They have seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the entire United States of America. And Texas is the only state in the history of the United States to build our own border wall. I want to express my gratitude for the leadership of Colonel McCraw, the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, as well as to General Seltzer, the Adjutant General for the state of Texas. I thank both them and their teams for all they are doing. What they are doing now is deploying a strategy that no state has ever before deployed to stop people from entering Texas illegally. You've seen it on video. Maybe some of you yourselves have taken pictures of it. With the National Guard and DPS working together, they are putting down mile after mile after mile of concertina razor wire border barrier right on the border itself, and then line it 2 or 3 or 4 strands at a time. And behind it, you'll have National Guard soldiers as well as DPS officers. Together, those two strategies have directly stopped people from entering Texas illegally. It was highly well documented on the night that Title 42 was lifted. And the strategy has only been deployed further since that time. As we speak right now, that strategy is being expanded in areas where there's potential crossing that could occur. Even though we've done a lot, we recognize that more must be done. Importantly, the legislature has recognized that also. And they stepped up to begin with by providing and allocating just this session $5.1 billion for Texas to do even more to secure our border. That comes on top of what they allocated last session, which was about $4.5 billion for Texas to secure the border. In just 2 sessions, Texas is spending close to $10 billion to deal with the crisis and chaos caused by the Biden administration. I'm signing bills today that will ensure that Texas will be able to do even more to stop illegal immigrants from crossing into our state. The first bill addresses one of the causes and one of the greatest threats to the border crossings, and that is the deadly and dangerous Mexican drug cartels. They are terrorists, and I'm about to sign Senate Bill 1900 that treats them as terrorists. What Senate Bill 1900 does is it provides for the designation of drug cartels and other similar groups as foreign terrorist organizations. It adds foreign terrorist organizations to organized crime offenses under state law. It adds higher penalties for criminal activity by a foreign terrorist organization. It also adds foreign terrorist organizations to intelligence databases, and it allows local public nuisance claims to be filed against foreign terrorist organizations. I want to thank Senator Cesar Blanco and House Representative Member Tracy King for working to get this to my desk. And I also want to thank 2 folks who are here with us today who helped out not just in this effort, but also helped it in other efforts I'm going to be talking about later on. They've been active and engaged, really working pretty much at ground zero throughout this process. And that is Sheriff Ray Delbosky and Sheriff Benny Martinez. Why don't y'all step forward at this time, if you would. Senate Bill 1900 is now law in the state of Texas. And so we got you and there you go. Thank you. Next is the law I'm signing that creates a force multiplier on the border. This is a situation that we're put in where we need all hands on deck, and Senate Bill 1484 helps to achieve that goal. It authorizes the Texas Department of Public Safety to train local law enforcement officials on cartel-related activity, as well as the best tactics to address border crimes. The training includes best practices for the interdiction, investigation, and prosecution of criminal activity in the border region. It requires the Texas Department of Public Safety to identify ways that local law enforcement can help DPS to secure the border. This will help DPS and local law enforcement on the border collaborate on achieving success under Operation Lone Star. I want to thank Senator Brandon Creighton and Justin Holland for getting this bill to my desk. Senate Bill 1484 is now law in the state of Texas. Next is Senate Bill 423. It fully authorizes the Texas Military Department to use drones to secure the border. They've been authorized to use drones for various other purposes. We wanted to make sure this was crystal clear in state law, that these drones could be used by the National Guard as they go about the process of securing the border. As I mentioned before, the National Guard is playing an essential role in helping the state to better secure the border from the open area that's been created by the Biden administration. Giving the National Guard the ability to use drones just expands their capabilities to do even more. I want to thank Senator Angela Paxton and House Member Terry Wilson for getting this bill to my desk. Senate Bill 423 is now law in the state of Texas. Senate Bill 1403 is another law to make our border more secure. It's another law that focuses on the concept of collaboration. It authorizes the governor to execute an interstate compact for border security among interested states that does not require approval of Congress. The compact must provide for joint action among compacting states, including sharing law enforcement intelligence on illegal activity occurring at the border, sharing state resources to build a physical barrier and technological surveillance system, and sharing other law enforcement resources to ensure the protection of both people and property. I want to thank Senator Tam Parker and Representative David Spiller for their efforts to get this bill to my desk. Senate Bill 1403 is now law in the state of Texas. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Governor.
Dan, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, sir. There are a lot of devastating consequences because of Biden's open border policies, one of which are felt very acutely by those who live along the border or those who own property along the border where they farm or ranch. These farms and ranches have been ripped apart. And ever since I began going down to the border, talking to local officials after the Biden administration took over, one thing I heard time and time again is that these local ranchers and farmers, they needed help addressing these challenges. Part of the help is provided in the form of repelling illegal immigrants trying to come across the border. But you still have cartels and smugglers who cut through fences and property and destroy it. And these property owners have suffered massive dollar damages. They have to come out of pocket to rebuild their homes, their ranches, the lost cattle, etc. The state of Texas wanted to step up and address that challenge, and they did that in Senate Bill 1133. It helps property owners who have been overrun by the massive illegal immigration. Increased migrant and legal and law enforcement activity, particularly in border and rural counties, has left many landowners with substantial financial losses as well as property damages. What this bill does is it compensates landowners who suffered property damage on agricultural land, as well as, or as a result of, a trespasser committing a border crime of smuggling of persons, evading arrest, human trafficking, or a drug offense. Texas landowners may now receive up to $75,000 per incident. I want to thank Senator Cesar Blanco and Representative Tracy King for getting this bill to my desk. Senate Bill 1133 is now law in the state of Texas.
Going home with a big collection.
A request was made to the state of Texas by Border Patrol, where the Border Patrol could do even more to secure the border as well as secure the state of Texas if they were authorized to arrest people for crimes under Texas law. And what Senate Bill 602 does is to provide that authorization. It gives Border Patrol agents more tools to secure the border and keep our state safe. It gives Border Patrol agents powers of arrest and search and seizure for any felony offense under Texas law if the arrest, search, or seizure is incident to a detainment under federal law and occurs at a port of entry or at a Border Patrol traffic checkpoint. I want to thank Senator Birdwell and House sponsor Sam Harless for getting this to my desk. Senate Bill 602 is now law in the state of Texas. Thank you, sir. Come here. Good job. Got it? I want to give you breaking news. I mentioned earlier that the Texas legislature provided the state $5.1 billion to secure the border. I also told you we always look to employ whatever strategies will be effective in securing the border. Under Colonel McCraw and General Seltzer, they came together to employ this strategy. This is a new water-based barrier of buoys that you can see what it will look like in the river, where we can put mile after mile after mile of these buoys. To go back, what we're doing right now, we're securing the border at the border. What these buoys will allow us to do is to prevent people from even getting to the border. This is what they look like up close. This is what they will look like from the sky from a longer strand. And that process is beginning pretty much immediately. Along those lines, I'm going to have Colonel McCraw speak and then General Seltzer before I take questions, but Colonel McCraw can provide you more information about the deployment of these buoys.
Thank you, Governor. Well, first, I'd like to say that, 90 years ago, public enemy number one were the gangsters. Pretty Boy Floyd, John Dillinger, the Brady Group, Bonnie and Clyde. Today, public enemy number one are the Mexican cartels, the most powerful and ruthless and violent criminal organization in the world right now. They impact every community in Texas, as Governor, as you know, and you've said a number of times, and every community in the United States. As other governors know, why they send resources here to help support your operations. You made it very clear in the beginning, Operation Detect and Interdict transnational criminal activity between the ports of entry because Border Patrol was taken off the line. And we've done that working with Texas military forces and our other partners and at the local level, been able to interdict crime. But you've been also very clear about being proactive. What can we do with hold-the-line operations? And we've been doing those, and as the General can tell you, and they've worked, obviously, because nobody needs to be coming between the ports of entry. It's dangerous. Family units that come across the river between the ports of entry are risking themselves and their family members. They're putting themselves at harm's way. And the only one that benefits, the only one that is enabled, enriched, and empowered are the Mexican cartels when that happens. And clearly, a strategy in terms of securing the border from the Mexican cartels and at the ports of entry and between the ports of entry matters in terms of the impact. What you see here is just another iteration, another tool. The razor wire has provided a mobile capability in using the resources and expertise of the Texas military. They can deploy it quickly right at the river to deter them from even risking themselves coming across. This is another iteration in terms where the buoy is on the water itself. It can be quickly deployed and can be moved. All of these are mobile, and this idea, I'd like to tell you that the General and I thought about it because we're brilliant, Governor, but unfortunately that's not the case. The General is brilliant, I'm not so much. But the bottom line is Border Patrol is already working on this. This was something that Border Patrol had already looked at, designed, and even tested. BORTAC had tested it. They've worked through this type of system. And they looked at the risk mitigation. Because it's not about risking. We don't want anybody to get hurt. In fact, we want to prevent people from getting hurt, prevent people from drowning. And this is a proactive way, and we're about to deploy the first 1,000 feet of it in Eagle Pass because right now the center of gravity for smuggling is Maverick County in the Eagle Pass area. And we don't want people to come across and continue to put themselves at risk when they go between the ports of entry. That's my comment.
Thank you very much. Also, at the head of the effort to turn back or deny access by illegal immigrants into the state of Texas has been the National Guard, led by General Seltzer.
Thank you, Governor. I just want to say Texas is extremely fortunate to have a governor who is absolutely relentless in his actions to protect the state's sovereignty, secure our border, and preserve the rule of law in Texas. At the beginning of this session, he made an emergency action item to secure the border. The legislators behind me heeded that call, and my agency applauds them for all their tireless efforts throughout the last few months. They've passed comprehensive laws that we've seen that will enable a whole-of-government approach to securing the border between Texas and Mexico. Additionally, as has already been said, they've secured $5.1 billion so that we can continue this effort into the next biennium. So I applaud all of you. Additionally, Texas is no longer ground zero for this crisis. Texas is a stronghold. This is exemplified by 11 states sending their National Guards to the Texas border to help protect the nation. So thank you, Governor, for your leadership. Thank you to the legislature for your leadership, and we'll continue to move on into the future.
Thank you. Thank you to you and your team. Thank you very much. Take a few questions.
Governor, one of your other priorities is, of course, the smuggling bill, which is on the topic of the special session. One of the two key differences in the House and Senate bill, that's one of the reasons that's holding up the Senate from signing die, is a provision about reducing the sentence for family smuggling. That's something that the House supports, but the Senate does not. Which proposal are you more supportive of?
You know, in a way, this is just like the property tax issue. The House and Senate are very close, and there's no reason why the House and Senate cannot quickly come together on all of those bills and get them to my desk.
It's not quickly happening, though. So is there any...
I'm telling you, it can happen very quickly, very easily. Just like a lot of bills were negotiated at the end of the session, Senate Bill 2627 for one, House Bill 5 for another. There was nothing but a cloud of uncertainty over them until the last 48 hours. And then suddenly people got to a table, negotiated between the House and Senate, and deals were struck. That just needs to be repeated for all of the items on this special session call.
Governor, on that topic, the Senate has passed some border security bills that are outside of your Senate call, or your session call. Are you suggesting the House should come back for those, or what is your pleasure on that?
So I've been abundantly clear to members of the legislature and to the public. I'll put items on this call for certain purposes because I want these items passed. And there'll be nothing else added to any special session item until the items that I put on the call this session are passed.
Governor, one of the bills that the Senate passed was making unauthorized entry by migrants in the coordination of state crime. Would you support that bill? And also, does that bill, in your eyes, conflict with the Arizona versus U.S. ruling in the Supreme Court?
So again, with regard to legislation in a special session, I'm focused on making sure we get across the finish line what the voters voted on and expect us to address, and that is this property tax bill and those two items on the border that I put on that were both in my state address. We are going to get those passed before we take up any other legislation, period.
Hey, Governor, or maybe the general and Colonel Carl, because these things almost look like they could be rest stops halfway across, which would invite somebody to come, I'll get that far, I'll rest up, and I'll get the rest away. Is there going to be some way to discourage that kind of...
So know this, and Colonel McCraw is going to provide you the answer. You might imagine we went through that intellectual process before these were deployed, and they operate in a way that does not allow that. But I'll have Colonel McCraw explain to you in more detail.
Yeah, and importantly, the governor was also concerned about loss of life. You know, was this going to be a risk to migrants coming across, family units along those lines? And the answer is, you know, anytime they get in that water, it's a risk to the migrants. This is the deterrent from even coming in the water. Now, it's not to say that this has been tested a number of times, a number of ways by special operators, tactical operators, specialists with Border Patrol. And because of the water and the buoyancy of these, it's very difficult to be able to go through these. Very difficult to come over it. Now, there's things you can do, and I won't tell you exactly what to do, at what time to do it, okay? There's ways to overcome it, but it takes great effort. It takes specialized skills and equipment to do it. And the whole idea, though, is if something we can do quickly, we can put it there, and it deters large groups of people from moving in that area, and we can control it with it, along with the a deployment of razor wire and a sufficient number of soldiers and troopers. You know, it's an in-depth defense.
But it doesn't look attractive to somebody from a distance, because I'm looking at it from here, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, I can grab a hold of that.
Well, you could sit there for a couple days, hold on to it as well. But eventually you're going to get tired and want to go back. You'll get hungry.
Say it again. As the Colonel has made clear, it will be deployed strategically to address areas that may be crossed. We wouldn't want to deploy it if it's not an area that's being crossed. And so we will find the best strategy to deploy it. I can't hear you.
What's the cost of deploying those buoys?
Well, I can tell you that it's under $1 million for our first deployment, and it depends on how much more is going to be acquired over time. And that'll be based upon the threat and what we're able to do. And of course, the legislature's put us in great position with the resources on the barrier side, so we'll see.
Less than $1 million for 1,000 feet.
Yeah, the initial thing is for 1,000 feet.
What's the official date for installation?
I'm sorry?
The official date for installation on the house?
July 7th.
And how tall are they?
These are about 4 feet. They can be 6 feet, depending on the water. They can be different height. They're actually been used overseas and for marine barriers to be able to, in a bay, to protect it along those lines. So it's not like it's something that hasn't been deployed before. It's buoyant, which is important if you're talking about the floodplain. It doesn't create, an offset in the water, and it's something to be removed.
Governor, I forgot to ask you on Tuesday, but what do you think of the impeachment of Attorney General Pasadena?
It's headed toward a Senate trial where there is every expectation of a full, fair, and transparent process.
Do you support Pasadena?
Can you swim under that? Is that?
Versions, yes, you can or you can't. There's also webbing that'll go down and anchor us to the bottom of the, so it's what we opt for and what we deploy with it.
That's it, guys, thank you.
If I just provide one last explanation that cannot be overemphasized, and that is a phrase that Colonel used moments ago was a layering effect. When we're dealing with gatherings of 100 or 1,000 people, one of the goals is to slow down and deter as many of them as possible. Some may eventually get to the border where they are going to face that multi-layer razor wire and a full force of National Guard and DPS officers, which they will not be allowed to pass. They both know they have one instruction: do not allow anybody to enter into the state of Texas, period. This is a barrier that will slow down and reduce the number of people who will even be able to make it past that particular barrier.
Great, thank you, guys, that's all we have time for.
All right. Thank you very much.
I think the answer is yes.